I really have no response to that. The last I checked, Sarah Palin's not much of an expert on nuclear issues. If the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff are comfortable with it, I'm probably going to take my advice from them and not from Sarah Palin.
Here's guessing Barack Obama's not going to take advice from Sarah Palin on a Supreme Court retirement either.
And I don't know about you, David, that didn't sound like no response to me. Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABCNews.com's Top Line. I'm David Chalian, today from New Orleans.
And I'm Rick Klein in much newsier Washington.
No doubt about that. We're bringing you the latest political headlines, reporting, insight, analysis, everything you need and want to know about politics.
And it's twitter.com/thenote to keep informed about all the daily developments, including the big ones that are happening as we speak.
A huge one today. Rick, get us started. What is your top line?
Retiring. Justice John Paul Stevens, the longest-serving member of the Supreme Court and the leading member of the liberal wing on the court, has announcing that he is retiring at the end of this current Supreme Court term. That, of course, gives President Obama a second chance to select someone for the Supreme Court. And, David, this is against a much different political context than we had a year ago. So much has happened in the past year to change the politics. I'm guessing just slightly here that this, going on a bit of a limb, is saying there's going to be a bigger fight this time around.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, we're in the midst of an election year, Rick, and obviously any Supreme Court nomination process riles up the bases of both parties, exactly what each party wants to do in a midterm election year. It's going to be fascinating to see out of the White House just how big of a fight they want to have here. Republican revival. That's what I'm doing down here in New Orleans. The Southern Republican Leadership Conference has gotten underway. Sarah Palin is going to be the big draw this afternoon. But her potential main competitors, should she choose to run for the 2012 Republican nomination, are actually up in Minnesota. No shows. Tim Pawlenty and Mitt Romney not showing up at this conference today. But, Rick, this is a red meat crowd. This is all about as much Obama bashing as they could drum up. That's right. And one interesting thing to watch is that there will be a straw poll at this weekend's event. And David, you made an interesting point on the blog earlier this week that depending on the outcome, we could actually see a lot less of these straw polls as time goes by, or less emphasis on these straw polls, depending again on what happens. STUPAK'S sayonara. Bart Stupak went from backbencher to household name during the extended health care debate, and it wasn't always for good reasons or comfortable reasons. And today he is now joining the ranks of retiring Democratic congressmen. Of course, this gives another opportunity for Republicans, a prime pickup opportunity in a closely divided seat in Michigan. And beyond that, it takes away a bit, David, from the message that Democrats have been trying to build about health care being a net positive for them. To have someone so closely associated with the bill get out when he is under pressure from both the left and the right detracts a little bit from that message. Oh, no doubt. It's that double attack, as you're saying, from each side that kind of just makes him, I guess, think, do I really need to go through this? And it's going to be a really tough district for Dems to hang on to. ENSIGN'S exit. That's our final top line today. Here's some not so welcome news for the Republican Party. John Ensign back in the headlines, the Republican senator from Nevada, getting some calls back home, Rick, for some Republican leaders there in the Silver State that he should step down, that his scandal is just causing too much of a distraction. And as you know, they don't want to distract from anything this year in Nevada other than taking down Harry Reid. That's exactly right. There was a devastating story earlier in the week in the Las Vegas Sun that depicted him really as out of touch and increasingly isolated in his keeping his own counsel on this. But you're right, the pressure is beginning to build a little bit more. You have more Republicans saying we have bigger things to worry about right now than keeping John Ensign in the Senate. Exactly. You were mentioning before how we are in the midst of this midterm cycle right now, and primary season is pretty much upon us. We're joined today by Dr. Rand Paul. He's one of the Republicans seeking the nomination for Senate from Kentucky. He joins us from Cincinnati today. Dr. Paul, thanks a lot for being here. I do want to start with our breaking news this morning about a Supreme Court vacancy. John Paul Stevens' retirement obviously opens up the chance for Barack Obama to make another pick. And you're running to serve in the United States Senate, sir, and I'm asking, I want to know from you, is this the kind of thing you believe, you know what, the president really gets his pick here? He won the election, elections have consequences, or is this something that you want to sort of fight very hard with the White House on, and the kind of nominee that would get your vote?
Well, I'd say the only good news is it's hard to imagine that he can get a more liberal justice or a justice that has a more loose interpretation of the Constitution. So that's the only good news about it.
But in terms of how you view these things, do you tend to say, well, obviously this is a Democratic president, he gets his choice, or do you want to know a lot about who this nominee is and make sure that it's in keeping with your vision?
the thing is the Constitution gave the confirmation process to the Senate, so obviously the senators do have a lot to say about it, and I will be vocal about it and vocal about what kind of justice that I would like to see serve.
And tell me about that, sir. What kind of justice would you like to see served?
I'd like to see someone who interprets the Constitution strictly, someone who believes that the federal government was given enumerated powers and that it shouldn't be doing willy-nilly whatever a majority decides. You know, I don't think we live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic. It's not supposed to be that 51% of the people can vote to remove the First Amendment or the Second Amendment or the Fourth Amendment. These things are protected by the Constitution, and I don't want someone who believes that the Commerce Clause means anything. Since the 30s and 40s, we've interpreted the Commerce Clause to allow the federal government to regulate everything, and I think that's a mistake.
Dr. Paul, Republicans are meeting down in New Orleans, the Southern Republican Leadership Conference, and one of the big items of the discussion really is what to do with and how to channel the energy of the Tea Party movement. You've gotten a lot of support from the Tea Party movement. I'm curious if you consider yourself to be a Tea Partier and really what that means to you, what the movement means to you.
Absolutely. I feel a part of the Tea Party. I probably was at the very first Tea Party in the country in 2007. I was also there in 2008, and the first campaign event I went into Kentucky was a Tea Party April 15th of last year. I think the Tea Party is about concern and worry over the deficit and over the debt and over the mounting interest that we're paying on the debt and whether or not we can continue to manage such an enormous debt.
Dr. Paul, some Tea Party activists recently were calling for an abolishment of the Social Security system. Do you endorse that idea?
I think what we need to do is understand the basic problem we have, and we have to admit this problem. So many of the politicians just keep adding new expenditures. There used to be many workers for one retiree. At one time it was 30 workers for one retiree. Now, as we have an aging population and less workers, you've got one worker for one retiree. And this year, for the first year, we're going to pay out more in Social Security than we receive in taxes. That's a problem. It's a time bomb waiting. And what you need are people that would represent the people in Washington who would say, there are problems here and we have to have some honest solutions. And I will be one of those who will present solutions and say, we've got to do something if you want to save Social Security.
Dr. Paul, your Republican primary opponent, Trey Grayson, has gotten support from, among others, the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell. I'm curious, if you are elected to the Senate, would you have any hesitation about voting for Senator McConnell? Do you think he should be the Senate Republican leader? If not him, who would you like to see serving there?
Well, I think he's been a good minority leader, and I think that there are many things Senator McConnell has done that I agree with. He's not particularly helping or being particularly helpful to me in the primary, but I think I can work with him. I've extended an olive branch to him, and I met with him privately during this campaign. I think the fact that he would meet with me also shows that it's a sign of strength on our part that we very well could win this race. I compliment Senator McConnell on his decade-long fight against McCain-Feingold, and that recently was overturned in the Supreme Court, and I've been a big supporter of his on that. And I like to emphasize the things we agree on, not the things we disagree on.
And very quickly, sir, in that meeting, we just have a couple seconds left here. In that meeting, what was the purpose of you reaching out to him? Were you trying to express dissatisfaction with his endorsement of Grayson and the idea that the Republican establishment was against you?
No, not really. I wanted to let him know that while the issues are very important to me, term limits, ending earmarks, reining in out-of-control federal spending, that there were many things we agreed on and that I thought we could work together. Even if he does oppose me in the primary, I thought we can work together after the primary, and I wanted to reassure him of that, and also maybe by saying that, encourage him not to be overly involved in my race and in our race. And I think most Kentucky voters want to decide for themselves. They don't want somebody in Washington to dictate who is their candidate.
Has he heeded that call, not overly involved?
I guess it depends on who you ask.
I'm asking you.
That, you know, if I tell you, you promise you won't tell anyone.
You got
right?
it. There are assurances.
Dr. Rand Paul, I'm going to let you off the hook there, sir, because we ran out of time.
All right, good. There you go.
Thank you very much for joining us today from Cincinnati. Good luck out on the campaign trail.